For decades, Sandra Bullock stood as one of Hollywood's most beloved figures, the rare star who seemed untouched by chaos, glowing with warmth, humor, and effortless charm. She was the highest-paid actress in the world more than once, celebrated for films that defined entire eras. But behind that familiar smile lived a woman shaped not only by success, but by silence, loss, and a private resilience few ever saw. Born in 1964 to a German opera singer and an American voice coach, Sandra's childhood unfolded between continents, airports, performance halls, and the quiet corners where children wait for rehearsals to end. That early exposure to artistry carved something steady in her, a sense of discipline, a belief in long work, a longing for normalcy, even as she moved through extraordinary spaces. When she finally broke through in the 1990s, the world saw only the triumph, the quick wit, the timing, the natural magnetism. They saw a rising star. What they couldn't see was the woman behind the curtain, someone who had already learned how to hold herself together, even when life demanded more than she could show publicly. Sandra's ascent was swift, almost cinematic in itself. After small, early roles, speed launched her into a new orbit, the kind of breakthrough that rewrites a life overnight. From there came a cascade of films that shaped her legacy. While You Were Sleeping, Miss Congeniality, The Blind Side, and Gravity, each carrying a different shade of her versatility. The world watched her evolve from comedic charm to commanding dramatic force, and Hollywood crowned her America's sweetheart, a title both flattering and impossibly heavy. To audiences, she was unstoppable, the woman who could headline any genre, who seemed effortlessly grounded despite global fame. But behind that public certainty lived a private woman navigating the same fragile human terrain as everyone else. The industry saw her as a symbol, a brand, an anchor. Few paused to ask who she was when the cameras weren't rolling. And as the spotlight intensified, so did the pressure. Success, even the kind that looks beautiful from the outside, casts long shadows. Beneath the applause, Sandra carried the quiet burden of protecting her personal world, guarding it from the noise that fame inevitably invites. In 2010, at the very moment Sandra stood at the peak of her career with an Oscar in hand, her personal world fractured in ways the public could barely imagine. What seemed like the happiest chapter of her life quickly spiraled into heartbreak when her marriage to Jesse James collapsed under the weight of multiple infidelities. The revelation stunned the nation, but the deepest wound belonged to her, a woman who had trusted fully, only to discover the foundation beneath her had never been real. She retreated from the noise, not to hide in shame, but to regain something far more elusive: safety. At the very same time, whispers grew within Hollywood's inner circles about pressures and fractures behind the scenes, moments of betrayal not from strangers, but from people once believed to be allies. Though Sandra never brought these private battles into public light, their impact lingered. While the world celebrated her achievements, she stood in the middle of a storm she never asked for. And yet, she spoke little, choosing silence over spectacle. It was the first quiet step toward rebuilding her life, not in front of cameras, but far away from them. In the aftermath of heartbreak, Sandra chose a different kind of rebirth, one rooted not in Hollywood, but in family. In 2010, she finalized the adoption of her son, Louis, beginning a chapter defined not by red carpets, but by midnight feedings, tiny footsteps, and the gentle work of becoming a mother on her own terms. A few years later, she welcomed her daughter, Layla, completing the family she had once feared she might never have. She didn't turn motherhood into publicity. There were no staged photo shoots, no magazine spreads, no declarations of reinvention. Instead, she withdrew from the constant orbit of fame, trading premieres for school drop-offs, interviews for bedtime stories, and the relentless pace of Hollywood for a life that finally felt real. She often said that her children were her soul's compass, a reminder of what mattered when everything else had fallen apart. In those quiet years, Sandra rediscovered herself, not the actress, not the icon, just a woman learning to heal, one small and sacred moment at a time. Just as Sandra began to rebuild her life in the shelter of motherhood, another unexpected chapter opened, one filled with warmth, steadiness, and a kind of love she had long stopped searching for. She met photographer Brian Randall, a gentle, private man who blended effortlessly into the quiet world she had created for her children. For nearly 8 years, they lived far from the noise, raising the kids together, crafting a life defined by simplicity and shared devotion. But behind their closed doors, Brian carried a burden he rarely showed. A battle with ALS, a ruthless illness that slowly dims the body even as the spirit tries to remain strong. As his condition worsened, Sandra stayed completely out of the public eye, giving him the dignity of privacy and the comfort of family. When he passed away in 2023, the world heard only a brief statement. There were no interviews, no emotional displays, no attempt to turn grief into spectacle. She simply disappeared, holding her pain close the way she always had. It was another quiet heartbreak in a life that had already known too many. Yet once again, she faced it with the same strength that had carried her through every storm, silent, steady, and deeply human. In recent years, Sandra has stepped almost completely out of the spotlight, not out of bitterness, not out of exhaustion, but out of choice. After decades of shaping some of Hollywood's most memorable films, she traded the glare of fame for the soft, unremarkable glow of everyday life. No red carpets, no award speeches, no sudden announcements. Just a quiet home, 2 growing children, and the freedom to exist without being watched. Those who glimpse her today might catch her in the park with Louis, reading beneath a tree, or guiding Layla through a crowded grocery aisle with that familiar, gentle patience. These small, ordinary scenes never make headlines because they hold no scandal, no surprise, only peace. And peace, unlike fame, is difficult to monetize.
For Sandra, this isn't a retreat from the world. It's a return to authenticity, to family, to the version of herself that existed long before movie sets and global acclaim. She once said that being a mother was the greatest role of her life. In the end, she chose that role above all others, and she chose it without hesitation. Though she has stepped away from the frenzy of public life, Sandra Bullock's influence hasn't faded. It has simply changed shape. Her recent roles have carried a deeper gravity, reflecting not just her craft, but the life she has lived. A woman confronting loss, reckoning with the past, and seeking truth in places where light is scarce. In one of her most powerful performances, she portrayed a woman emerging from prison and navigating a world that no longer recognized her. A role that mirrored the emotional terrain she had quietly crossed herself. And somewhere on the horizon, familiar whispers of a long-awaited reunion film have begun to surface. A beloved story revisited decades later, filled with magic, resilience, and the kind of emotional depth she can deliver like no one else. Fans wait, hoping for the moment she chooses to return. But whether she steps back onto the screen or not, her legacy is already secure. She remains not only one of Hollywood's most respected actresses, but a woman whose strength was shaped far from the spotlight. Quietly, gracefully, she has shown the world that true power begins not with applause, but with the courage to live honestly, even when no one is watching.